Well, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Good to see another full house here this evening. I'd like to call the regular council meeting for Monday, May 25th to order. Before I start, I would like to quickly and respectfully acknowledge that we are gathered here on the traditional territory of the Lekwungen-speaking peoples, represented by the Songhees and Kasepsin nations, and we're grateful to live, work, and play in this special place. Item 2 is approval of the agenda. I think there's a lot of people here that are gathered to speak about 420 Tamarack this evening. I just want to let everyone know that item 9.1, it has been struck off the agenda, mainly because there's a report. You can't put the cart before the horse, and there's no report, so no one here around this table wants to make a decision on it until we see the report, and that will be available by the next council meeting, I believe. So that has been struck off for those that are waiting. You can speak here tonight, that's fine, I have no problems. It might be more impactful when we actually bring it to the agenda, which will be at the next council meeting. And on that note, I'm going to look for a mover and seconder to adopt today's agenda, please. Thank you. Okay, Councillor. Sorry, you got it?
My apologies, Mr. Mayor. There's one amendment that item 10 in camera, the reason to close the meeting, we've added on one section, 92B, the consideration of information received and held in confidence relating to negotiations between the municipality, provincial government, or federal government, or both.
Okay, super, thanks. So on the amended agenda, okay, Councillor Olson and Councillor Grove seconds it. Any discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. Any opposed? Seeing none, motion carries. And I would also like to welcome Councillor Jensen, who is joining us virtually. Thanks very much for joining us this evening, Councillor Jensen. As far as item 3 goes, Mayor's message, I only have one message here, which is important to all the great taxpayers of Colwood, that the city of Colwood's property taxes notices will be mailed out this week. Actually, starting as of today. And payments are due July 2nd, just a reminder, everybody, because certainly don't want to have you pay, I want you to avoid the 10% penalty for late payment. And on that note, I'll move on to item 4, which is the adoption and receipt of the minutes. May I have a mover and seconder to approve and receive the minutes of the recommendation? Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Grove and Councillor Olson. Are there any errors or omissions? Seeing none, I'll call the question. Any opposed? Seeing none, motion carries. I will move on to public participation. Item 5, we have 3 written submissions that were received prior to the agenda publication, and they are attached to tonight's agenda. And there are 7 written submissions that were received after agenda publication, and they will be appended to the agenda following tonight's meeting. Yep. Go ahead. Councillor Ward. Councillor Ward.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. In relation to the written submissions received for the public's knowledge, one of the letters received is from a student on behalf of 100 local secondary students seeking support from the City of Colwood for a proposed bylaw amendment at the CRD. These students have written to the CRD and are planning on attending the CRD to amend the bylaw, the Clean Air Bylaw 3962. What they're seeking to do is just to put up enforcement signs at bus stops locally that indicate that smoking and similar activities are prohibited within 7 meters of a bus stop, which is pretty comparable to what the CRD already places and Island Health already places near facilities like that. So I'm just looking to make a motion for council that we write a letter in support of these students in publicizing the smoking ban, which already exists. The motion is strictly to put signage in place. So I'd like to move that we write a letter of support.
Councillor Day. Seconder is Councillor Day. And any discussion on that? It's a no-brainer to me. On that note, I'll call the question. Any opposed? Seeing none, motion carries. Thanks very much for bringing that up to us, Councillor Ward. I'd just like to thank everyone in the public for your written submissions. One member of the public has registered to speak virtually tonight. And before I open up the floor, is that person available? I don't see. Oh, is he? Andrew? Okay. So I will open the floor for Andrew. You get to go first before I open it up to the floor in City Hall. Andrew.
Through the chair, Mr. Mayor and Council, thank you very much for having me. I'm here to speak just very briefly as it relates to development permit delegation authority, specifically as it relates to in-stream projects. I represent PC Urban. We're a developer with an interest that's in the final stages of a development permit application on Island Highway. And while I can certainly see and understand the desire for council to have authority over development permits of larger residential mixed-use projects, I do think it's an important message being sent to keep an in-stream protection or to protect the folks that made the financial decisions under the rules of the day and in such good faith. In a time where our industry is working extremely hard and things are very, very challenging. Our particular project, we're very excited to be moving forward with quickly here. And just changing the process for us at this stage presents significant challenges and risk. So I just want to make sure that that's heard. And I'm sure there's a lot of smart folks and deliberations that have been going on about this. But I just think based on the time and the current economic environment that we're living in, it would be well received by the development folks and folks in the community to allow the people who have started the process under a set of rules to continue and finish under that set of rules if they're already in stream. I thank you very much for your time and for hearing me, and I'll keep it brief, not to slow up a very packed agenda here. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Peterson. Okay, I will welcome people from the floor to come up and speak. You have 2 minutes. Please come on up. If you could identify yourself and where you live, that would be great. Thank you.
Hello, Mayor and Council. Hello, Mayor and Council. My name is Caleb Crooks. I live over in Royal Bay, and I'm here to speak actually about the BC Transit delegation presentation you're about to hear from Mr. Megenbir. I'm sure he will go over all of the details about the exciting developments in the Victoria Regional Transit Plan. I'm the Vice President now of the Better Transit Society here in the Capital Region District. And I really wanted to come and speak to you actually just to flag a couple of things that I think are really important as Colwood specific items that are in the VRTP and are being developed. Chief among them being that on Mr. Megenbir's slides 13 and 14, there are some little maps talking about the potential network designs for the upcoming rapid transit network that will be included in the 25-year vision for this plan. And in those network designs, there's a potential for Colwood to really win big. There is the potential that we might see rapid transit alignments going into Colwood farther than what the current 95 does on Island Highway and Coldstream. There is a potential for BC Transit to consider routing rapid bus service all the way up Soup Road and through Kelly into Langford that way, which obviously is a much better service to Colwood residents. But I want to flag that that's not the only alignment that is proposed. The alignments ultimately haven't been decided and will be subject to future study. And so there's lots of other alignments that prioritize Langford over Colwood, for lack of a better word. There's lots of alignments that want to use the ENN or want to use Highway 1. And I just want to flag that I think this is a really important time for the city of Colwood to consider that we should be really getting the ball rolling on this opportunity, because we really need to start putting together a lot more transit priority, and we need to start thinking about the future of transit in this city. And I think that requires getting, dusting off the old urban systems report regarding the bus lanes on Soup Road. And I think that regards Island Highway and Goldstream as well, that we shouldn't lose out on the moment. And these plans are in development, and it's upon the city of Colwood and all of us to really show BC Transit our emphasis and enthusiasm to have rapid transit. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your feedback. That's great. Next, please. It's hot right now, so.
Perfect. Hello, my name is Shara Schultz from 401 Tamarack Road. Good evening, Mayor and Council. Thank you for removing 420 Tamarack from tonight's agenda.
Pausing and conducting a policy procedure review is a necessary step, and I'm here tonight to speak strongly in favor of the ultimate goal of that review, formally removing the Gamble Park and Tamarack Road pocket from the OCP's high-density designation. This isn't just about one building, it's about procedural integrity. We agree that pushing forward with this multi-story rezoning application before completing the ordered review puts the cart before the horse. It bypasses council's own directives and erodes public trust, so we are grateful for council to honor its own voted upon process. We saw commentary on social media this week suggesting neighborhood pushback is just volume, emotion, or narrow interest that ignores the absent future residents or children who inherit this infrastructure. With respect, our opposition is based on objective planning principles, safety, and council's own past logic. True leadership for future residents means building high density where infrastructure actually exists to support it. Forcing 6-story buildings into choked single access pockets with severe bottlenecks at Goldstream is a disservice to all future families in Colwood. If we ignore topographically isolated constraints, those future residents and children are the ones who will inherit the safety hazards, gridlock, and taxpayer burden. Our presence tonight isn't panic that found a crowd. It's a community asking council to align its mapping with reality. Council correctly rejected 396 Tamarack because high density does not fit in this pocket, and we urge you to use the policy review to fix the root cause, direct staff to amend the OCP boundary, and permanently protect the Gamble Park neighborhood. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Next, please.
Push the button.
Yeah, you're hot.
My name is Marie-Terese. I live at 408 Tamarack Road. Good evening, Mayor and Council. My neighbor just spoke of the critical need to fix the OCP mapping error during your policy review when you get an opportunity. I am here to offer constructive pro-housing path forward. We don't want to see this property sit empty forever. We're not anti-housing. We want to see that development succeed. We urge the council to use this policy review to pivot away from high-rise towers in this pocket by encouraging medium density designations that will enable more appropriate projects like a townhouse project. And that would align with the spirit of Bill 44. A 6-story building could potentially concentrate an additional 150 vehicles into a 2-story underground parkade, forcing them out to a narrow street at peak hours. This guarantees gridlock at Gamble Drive and Goldstream Avenue. Townhouses naturally distribute traffic. A tower demands aggressive and disruptive overhauls to our isolated water and sewer lines. Townhouses are more likely to use the existing, utilize the existing ground servicing frameworks, fitting more naturally the profile of the land rather than breaking it. We must also talk about the kind of housing that Colwood actually needs. High-rise structures require expensive concrete parkades, elevators, and complex engineering. This drives up the construction costs and results in tiny, expensive investor suites with high lifelong strata fees. Townhouses could deliver the missing middle, multi-bedroom, family-oriented homes with front door and possible outdoor spaces. This is the exact housing that young family and first-time buyers are looking to afford. Forcing a high-rise in this neighborhood could lead to prolonged public opposition and possibly costly delays for the development. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Next, please.
Good evening. My name's Charlotte. I live at 406 Gamble Place. During this policy procedures review, we need to address the major barrier to smart growth in Colwood, the city's rigid reliance on floor area ratios, or FAR, within the OCP to justify high-density high-rises. Citing FAR to push a 6-story tower into Tamarack Road treats planning like a math problem instead of a design solution. A spreadsheet metric is not an infrastructure plan. FAR measures square footage on paper. It completely ignores the physical reality of our narrow streets and the severe bottleneck where Gamble Drive and Whale meets Goldstream. We are not the only ones pointing this out. The province of British Columbia takes a notoriously dim view of using FAR to dictate land use. In its official small-scale multi-housing guideline, the province explicitly advises municipalities to move away from FAR because the province recognizes that rigid FAR limits choke architectural creativity and block the construction of middle housing density. Forward-thinking BC cities like Delta have completely eliminated FAR regulations for small multi-unit projects. They did this because they realized that blind adherence to FAR metrics forces an artificial binary choice. You either get a single family home or a massive concrete tower. When Colwood planning uses FAR as a strict rule, it traps developers to get a return on investment under a rigid floor area index. A developer is practically forced to stack units vertically into a disruptive 6-story footprint. If council abandons FAR for this pocket and regulates by form instead of using smart height limits, footprints and setbacks, you unlock creative problem solving. The developer can build ground-orientated family townhomes. This delivers missing middle housing that fits the natural profile of the land without crushing the neighborhood. Thank you.
Thanks very much. We got the gist of your message. Thank you. Next, please.
Mine fit into 2 minutes when I did it earlier, so we'll see. I'm Caitlin Keenan. I live at 391 Tamarack Road in the Gamble Tamarack neighborhood. I appreciate that the decision on 420 Tamarack has been deferred to allow council to consider due process for our neighborhood. I want to speak to the outstanding council resolution underlying this issue as a matter of urgency. Our neighborhood has been fighting an OCP designation that by every measure doesn't fit us. We're an established residential neighborhood, the same as dozens of others in Colwood, a dozen others in Colwood, but we're the only ones without a gentle infill designation. Instead, we're zoned for high-rise towers on a single access street, less than 40 meters from an already constrained signal. On May 4th, staff told this council's planning committee exactly what this means. They stated on the record that viable densification here requires converting the entire neighborhood wholesale to 15-story towers. In the meantime, a life safety problem will accumulate at public expense. Council passed Resolution 2025-224 last October, acknowledging that existing neighborhoods like ours deserve the dignity of a gentler approach. Staff's stated position since then has been in effect that the resolution doesn't apply to our neighborhood. I'd ask Council to consider whether that response reflects the intent of the resolution. We believe the path forward doesn't require a full OCP review. The OCP's own gentle infill objective, which is policy 6.2.4.1, was written precisely for established single detached neighborhoods like ours. The Colwood Corners designation wasn't. Applying it to a residential street is an inconsistency within the OCP itself, and a standard amendment can correct it. A medium density reclassification would resolve council's outstanding resolution, restore equitable treatment to our neighborhood, enable that missing middle housing the province is asking for, and remove a real infrastructure liability. What's needed is a specific time-bound directive to staff to bring it forward. There are a handful of meetings left before the election. This council knows this file. A new council won't. We're asking you to act while you still have the opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next, please.
Hi, my name is Lowell Keenan. I also live at 391 Tamarack Road. I don't have any prepared statements, but I do have a couple of notes from the Planning and Land Use Committee. One of which is that staff indicated that the Gamble intersection is not presently monitored for traffic flows. Second is that there is currently no legal way for a path to the Goose to be made inside of our neighborhood. All bike traffic would have to be routed along Whale or Goldstream Road. Third, there is presently no funding mechanism to cause developers to contribute to the major infrastructure changes that would be needed for maximizing density within our neighborhood, which would include a through road coming out either on Whale Road or some other point of egress. Finally, I would just make a rhetorical argument that much has been said that change is inevitable, and we are simply trying to hold back the future. I would submit to council that rate of change is a vitally important thing in many areas. I would submit as an example that if you're going to jump out of an airplane, your chances of having a good outcome are significantly better if you have a parachute than if you head straight to the ground. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next, please.
Good evening. My name is Anne Jeffrey. I also live at 391 Tamarack. I want to speak briefly on the staff report on policy projects and their increased capacity. I noticed in tonight's agenda the suggestion that the gentle infill policy, which I presume they mean from resolution 2025-224, be one of the additional priorities. That's wonderful. I also note that that resolution additionally directs staff to consider the appropriateness of the Gamble Tamarack neighborhood in the high density Colwood Corners area, and that has not at this point been suggested as one of the additional policy projects at this time. Now, we fully understand that staff have only so many hours in the day, and there's only so many of them. They have to prioritize. So if there is no capacity to complete that part of the resolution before the next OCP review, which we were told will be 2030, we don't love that outcome, but we can live with it. However, please, in that case, if that is the case, ensure procedural fairness by declining all development proposals, specifically that rely on that OCP's designation that is under review until such time as that review is done and resolution R 2025-224 has been completed. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Anne. Next, please.
Hi, I'm John Ferguson from 309 Fielden, and I don't want to talk about Tamarack. I would like to know what happened to the road transit review that we were promised probably about 14 months ago, where Royal Bay asked for sensible speed limits in residential areas and got it in 2 months. We have been asking for about 5 years for said sensible speed limits in my residential area. We've got nowhere. We've been told we need a letter to the council with everyone's sign. Done that. Nothing happened. Could somebody explain to me when we're going to get a sensible speed limit? I mean, 50 km an hour on a street that's 5.2 meters wide is pretty stupid. I mean, you care more about the ducks on the lagoon than you do about my kids. That's not good enough.
Thank you very much. Would you like to take a business card, sir? From the front here?
Yeah.
And if you want to pose that to staff, we can
Can someone please tell me when we're going to get something? We've been waiting.
Answers if you send that to us. Thank you. Next, please.
Oh, push here to speak. My apologies.
Yep. You see the red light?
The red,
There you go. You're
that one? Okay. Sorry. My name is Dan Lux. I live at 401 Gamble Place. Last week I went door to door with a petition, basically talking about opposition to the current OCP or our neighborhood OCP. Every single person, except for one person, signed that petition and doesn't think our neighborhood is appropriate to be within that OCP designation. I think something like this is better suited to maybe the Colwood Strip, somewhere that has the infrastructure for it. But every single person I went to, every single door that I knocked on, every single person signed it except for one. So that's basically all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
How do I turn it off?
No, you're good if you want to leave it on. Thank you. Next, please. And for this,
Is it on or not? Nope. It's on? Okay, it's on. Hi there. My name is Jason Schultz. I live at 401 Tamarack Road. I'm not as polished as many of these people. I do not like doing what I do here, standing here. I just want to say on October 14th, I stood in front of you that day, and I was actually very impressed. It's a simple thing. It's because basically I feel that in the modern world, basically very fast paced, often stuff is built, things are developed, and there's actually no consideration or actually really the small man feels just not heard, basically. It feels like I see lots of things later on after the fact where people say, I wish that hadn't happened, but yet they never even knew about it. So I was very impressed that you took the time personally to walk in our neighborhood, you walked our streets. In your own words, you said that there were things like going to the main transportation hub. That's a 20-minute walk. You said with your little legs at the time. I got little legs too, I get it. It's just the area that we're in there. It doesn't make sense to build the way that it's being forecasted. And I do appreciate that you took the time to walk down there and look around. At the moment, there is if a garbage truck or recycling truck comes, they actually go backwards down the streets, slowly, of course, to do their job. There's no turnaround points. There's nothing else there, which would cost a lot of money and a lot of taxpayer dollars to be able to build that. There are no sidewalks. There are no lights. There's just countless other things there. There's very little parking. Yeah, it's just as it stands, basically, it's just, yeah, it's a very small family neighborhood area. And I guess, like I said before, we're not against building, we're just against building out of reason. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much. This is the limit to our public participation. We've hit 20 minutes. Is there anyone else that wants to speak at this time? Otherwise, I'm going to have to get a motion to extend this. Anybody else wish to speak? Public participation? Seeing none, I'm finished then, and we'll move on to delegations. Item 6.0. Thank you everyone for coming up, and it takes courage to come up and speak. I know that some people feel very uncomfortable, but thank you. We've heard you, so thank you very much. And I'm going to turn this over. We're going to get an update on the Victoria Regional Transit Plan. Levi Megenbir, I hope I did that correctly, the Manager of Service Planning for Victoria Regional Transit. Over to you, Levi.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Your Worship and members of Council, for having me and my colleague, Chris Fudge, Director of Government Relations, here today to provide an update on the Victoria Regional Transit Plan. Just to note at the outset, this is currently in draft form, and we're really looking to give an update to Council. This one. Oh, there we go. Really just to provide an update on the draft Victoria Regional Transit Plan, talk a little bit about the 10 big moves that we've identified within the draft plan to move forward over the next 25 years, really for information and also for feedback and input from Council before we bring it back to the Commission later in the summer. Next slide. Doesn't seem to be working. So what are the key objectives from this particular plan? It's been about 15 years since we last conducted the long-range plan for the system. And so it's high time, with the significant number of changes, for us to revisit what that 25-year future is for the transit system. Another component really is to develop some comprehensive network and route design guidelines that will allow the transit network to continue to evolve and develop as the region continues to grow, densify, and change, to make sure that we don't have to come back out in 5 or 10 years and update the 25-year plan again. There's a number of rapid transit priorities that we'll be updating and building into the plan, so we'll talk a little bit about that. And then as well, there's a number of service and infrastructure investment priorities that we'll share today, and really talk about what some of those key elements are to move the system forward to 2050. Next slide. So there, as I indicated, there's been some significant changes within the region over the last 15 years. And one of those key components is the rapid pace of development here in the West Shore. We've seen it in Colwood, we've seen it in Langford, we've seen it in Souk and many other areas. So really, we have made some recent changes within the West Shore with the network restructure we did in January 2024, but we recognize we already need to revisit the transit network because things have been changing so quickly. So really, We need to modernize the network, and we need to, as well as the community continues to grow and develop, look at how we can use our transit resources more efficiently and effectively. Next slide. We've also seen a seismic shift in the policy landscape for transit and land use, starting with the province's bills 44 and 47, which significantly aligns between land use and transit. The CRD, of course, launched their regional transportation service and are looking at taking a stronger role within the region for regional transportation. So we've been working very closely with them through this plan, and then we will be continuing to work very closely with them as they update the regional transportation plan in the next couple of years. And then finally, every municipality within the region has updated your OCP in some way, shape, or form to align with Bills 44 and 47. So we had a great opportunity to speak about the future of transit as well as land use at the same time. So it was really a unique opportunity, and we worked very closely with local government staff through the process. Next slide. Before we talk about the plan, I think there's value in just quickly talking about some of the accomplishments we've achieved within the region over the last several years. So first of all, we have our electronic fare collection technology, UMO, and we just extended that last week with debit and credit tap, which was really exciting. We continue to work on highway dedicated infrastructure for rapid transit. And that's, of course, starting to extend into the West Shore now on the Island Highway, which is exciting. Battery electric bus rollout continues. We have 25 buses within the system operating using battery electric bus technology, and that rollout continues to move forward. We launched our first Blink Rapid bus line between downtown and the West Shore in 2023. We just completed the new Handy Dart facility in View Royal, allowing us to expand Handy Dart service for the first time in over 10 years, which is a huge milestone. And then finally, the province launched the Kids 12 and Under Ride Free program in 2021. And we've seen a resulting increase in youth riding the bus within the region, which is great to see. Next slide. I won't speak too much about this. The current system, almost 60 routes, over 300 conventional buses, over 50 Handy Dart buses. We're approaching closer to 900,000 annual service hours within the system now. So that continues to grow, which is great to see. We're over 26 million boardings per year. And we're seeing, as of last year, almost 1 million boardings within the city of Colwood jurisdiction. So it's great to see those ridership numbers continuing to grow. Next slide. We conducted a robust public engagement process to support this planning process. So we had an online survey, we had 9 open houses, and we had a number of key stakeholder engagement events. So we had almost 1,900 online survey responses. We talked to over 350 people who came out to talk to us in person. And then once again, we engaged with 23 stakeholder groups. That included neighborhood and community associations, major employers, and key institutions like UVic, BC Ferries, et cetera. We heard a lot of feedback, but if I can summarize it really briefly, there's a desire for improved frequency and reliability were some of the core pieces of feedback we got. There's this huge amount of comments about rapid transit. People want to see faster transit, more reliable transit, and a desire for simplified routes and direct connections. Next slide. I'm going to speed things up a bit here. Network and route design guidelines. Ultimately, this is about creating a clear framework for decision-making for transit. So we're treating every community within the region equitably. And so everyone understands if we build a community in a certain way, this is what we can expect from a transit perspective. So we'll be finalizing that as part of this plan process. Next slide. So this really brings us to the big reveal of the 10 big moves for the region. About 7 of those are rapid transit or rapid transit associated. So that includes the Mackenzie and Peninsula Rapid Bus lines, some new proposals to consider extending rapid transit to James Bay and Jubilee. It includes higher order transit to the West Shore. So that's a higher capacity vehicle like light rail or trackless trams, potential supplemental rapid transit corridors within the West Shore, the Uptown and 6 Mile Mobility Hub. 6 Mile is actually not represented there. This is, it's been updated since. And beyond rapid transit, we also have a priority to improve interregional connections to the North Island, delivery of the frequent transit network and modernizing the network to try to get more value out of our existing system, and then modernizing the Handy Dart service and continue to expand and invest in that. Next slide. So the network modernization, this is one of the most complex ones to communicate. I won't spend too much time on it, but we're really trying to build out a frequent transit grid. And we've worked on this in collaboration with local government staff, really to align the highest levels of service where we anticipate the highest level of density, growth, and ridership potential. Beyond that frequent transit grid, we have opportunities to implement supplemental regional express services and limited stop services to help serve certain areas better or more quickly. I think a classic case for that type of service could be Royal Bay in the future to get people in and out of Royal Bay during commuter times more efficiently and effectively. And then there's also the potential to consider digital on-demand service to lower density areas, essentially a new technology and service type where you can book your trip on an app, and the bus will come and pick you up and take you to the nearest hub to connect to other transit services within the region. Next slide. What are some other components of the network modernization? Part of it is really how can we use our existing resources more efficiently and provide more value to more people within the transit system. So one of those opportunities is to reduce service duplication. So for example, we have 20 routes right now that serve sections of Douglas Street. Is that the right number? Could we potentially spread some of that service out to provide more coverage and more frequency to more corridors within the region? Harmonized stop spacing is on certain corridors, we have stops very close together. So there's a potential to consider a slight increase to improve speed and reliability. And we actually got a high level of support from the public on the concept of minor changes there. And then we're also working on a bus speed and reliability program to help support our local governments moving transit more quickly in the future. And we're still working on that project, but we hope to update councils in the future on that. Next slide. Handy Dirt modernization. As I mentioned, we just completed the new facility, so we can finally expand, which is fantastic. There's also the custom transit solution technology that we'll be looking to roll out, which improves the customer experience, simplifies booking, and eligibility approval processes, just to improve trip planning, improve service efficiency, and improve the customer experience. Next slide. So this is really the big, I would say the most significant of the big moves for the West Shore. So this is looking to graduate to that next level of transit, whether that be light rail transit or trackless trams. Given the significant changes to planned land use in the future, we just need to revisit the alignment between the 6 Mile Mobility Hub and Langford. So there will need to be a separate study to revisit that component. And I think once again, there's opportunity for ongoing engagement and consultation with local government staff and councils within the region as that process unfolds. And then we also need to revisit the technology, like is it a train? Is it a trackless tram, high capacity trackless tram? Next slide. Beyond the higher order transit and potential supplemental rapid bus corridors within the West Shore, we've got the development of the frequent transit network. And there's a number of different transit priority investments to support bus speed and reliability that we can consider. Let's see, I am out of time. Next slide. So just before I talk about next steps, I just want to say this is a very ambitious plan. It requires that all parties within the region work collaboratively together in a different way than we have historically. The province with more funding, potentially legislative opportunities for funding, the CRD for supporting TDM, and individual municipalities with how we can move buses more quickly and efficiently through streets. And so in terms of next steps, we're presenting this draft plan to all municipalities in the CRD. We're updating our key stakeholders and rights holders final time. And the plan is to present the revised draft plan with that feedback to the Commission in July for their feedback and input. With that, I want to thank you so much for having me here today, and I look forward to answering any questions council may have.
Thanks very much, Levi. I'm going to open it up for questions from council. I'll start with Councillor Ward.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Levi, for the presentation. I noted in there the comment that one of the focuses is prioritizing growth along transit corridors. And I think when I came on to council in 2022, we did review that urban systems report that Mr. Crook mentioned, which indicated the opportunity for a kind of a rapid transit or high priority transit corridor along Souk Road. And I took that to be as kind of the intention. And I think in good faith, this council proceeded with that in mind. You'll know probably even on your drive out here, you pass, there's a pretty large development going in just opposite Royal Roads that was approved based on the premise of this being a transit corridor. The idea being that if we densify that corridor, we could retain the the road right away. Staff had planned for that for, I think, a 30-meter dedication so that we would be able to put in those priority bus lanes and even potentially leave it open for others, some sort of future mode of transit. So I just wanted to leave you with the note that I think that, I only speak for myself, but I think our actions have shown that we're very keen on making sure that that the transit network doesn't become kind of lost in the noise from the bigger municipality. Langford is getting spoken about because the population is higher, but when you look at where the largest density and build outs are in the West Shore, currently Royal Bay area, but that would include Olympic View, Beachlands, and that's an area that's underserved now. We get lineups and buses passing by at peak times for the high school and things like that. And there's a huge opportunity, I think, when you speak about high order rapid transit and again being along a dense corridor. If it's just running out Highway 1, really once you kind of hit the View Royal area, there isn't anything there, and there's a lot of parkland with Thetis Lake and the rest. So you're driving by a lot of areas to then get to the hub. And I think logically, the current order of flow with vehicular traffic is to come down through Colwood. Many people come down Goldstream, Whale Road, Highway, on the Souk Road. So I think there's a great opportunity if you're looking at densification on a long transit corridor to look where the opportunity already exists today. And I know BC Transit has had some challenges, I think, with running the bus lines up Souk Road because existing property owners and gaining right away, there's some challenges there. But I would say that if you're looking at the stretch beyond the Whale Road, Souk Road intersection and then where West Shore Recreation Center is, beyond that, as I said, we've already taken steps to secure that right away beyond that. So the notion of running something up and connecting to Langford by a Kelly Road or some other option, I think is one we certainly want to be at the table with BC Transit and other stakeholders. I mean, at the end of the day, I'm a big proponent of LRT. I'd really rather see that than anything else, but that may still be pie in the sky dream, but I'm a dreamer. And I think that's ultimately the best solution for our region. But I just wanted to leave you with that this isn't just a thought for us. Others might be talking about it. We've made development decisions on prioritizing that growth corridor. And but we hope that you keep that in mind as this, conversation progresses. So, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Councillor Day.
Thank you. I'm pleased to see the changes coming forward and moving us back to a system that worked really well before. I've been a transit rider for more than 35 years here, and those routes were relied on, and they changed a lot based on competition for ridership. I think would be the fairest way to say, you're looking for the greatest number of doors to be able to access the transit system. And I appreciate that's where you're coming from in running the buses down Goldstream. And it's become a corridor that's difficult to get through, whether you're on a bus or in a car. And so I think it's bringing us back to you're making these transit priority investments for speed and reliability as well. So I do think that the Souk Road and the Kelly Road corridor are just better corridors for getting through our area. Not because I'm for Colwood necessarily, but those are routes that I see working in my daily route. And I think that the mobility hubs and the exchanges are really important. And I just wanted to ask how this might roll out in terms of needing places for park and ride destinations. I don't want to be Vancouver with the vast parking lot where you have to figure out what quadrant you're in to find your car. But I would like to see little nodes of places where you could park and catch the bus from there.
Yeah, excellent question. So through the chair, it was the last slide I had to kind of skip over as we were running out of time there. But there is additional park and ride capacity identified in the plan within the West Shore and the peninsula. I know there's a couple of sites that have historically been contemplated. For example, in the Esquimalt View Royal local area plan, the 6 Mile mobility hub area, once again, it's View Royal formally, but it's potentially accessible to Colwood residents, and then potentially out towards the Luxton, Happy Valley area. As a general sort of catchment area. There's an identified need for future park and ride capacity sort of in that area as well, pending further conversations and review.
So in the planning for your routes, are you looking at destinations as well as where, not just where the riders come from, but where they're trying to get to? Because that seems to have been difficult to imagine in the past. You know, whether it's hospitals, there's a lot of places that would benefit by not having to improve their parking structures, like Vic General, just by being able to get there a different way.
Yeah, great question. So through the chair, I think that is really the primary purpose of the network and route design guidelines, is to provide greater clarity on how we connect things, key places within the region together, and to help provide guidance on the number of transfers that someone can expect from a particular place type to another particular place type elsewhere within the region. And so the benefit for that is it provides clear guidance to BC Transit when we're doing our planning, that we need to make sure we're connecting certain areas in a certain way. And it also provides sort of a promise to the public or local governments around, if you build a community node in a certain way, that you can understand how BC Transit will approach connecting that area into the rest of the region from a service design perspective. The other thing I'll say too is that that's sort of from the network perspective. When we look at individual routes and corridors, similarly, we're going to look at other characteristics along that corridor: density, ridership potential, the potential to prioritize transit and move it more quickly, and a number of other factors to determine what type of service should we be using to connect between this node and that node. It's sort of a two phased approach, one looking at the network and how we connect nodes, and then the other is based on the characteristics of the corridor between those nodes, what type of service is the most suitable based off the characteristics we see. So hopefully that was helpful.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Olson, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And thank you for the presentation, Levi. I think you actually just answered some of the questions that I had. Specifically, I mean, you know, Colwood is rapidly growing. Some of the feedback that I'm hearing is that transit's just not able to keep up with the pace of the demand in the neighborhood areas, specifically in areas like Royal Bay. So I was just wondering, for the benefit of the public, to what metrics are being used to determine that increase in the service frequency is my first question. And then just my second question, so I don't forget, I would love for you to elaborate a little bit more on the digital on demand. That really sort of caught my eye there. So.
For sure. So through the chair, the first one is complex to answer because there's a component of what type of service is warranted based off the characteristics of a community, a corridor, and then there's also the funding reality we have at any given moment. And so I would say Royal Bay is a classic case where we know it needs more service than it has today. Part of the challenge is we don't have enough resources to do everything we would like to do within the transit system. So as an example, we had no expansion funding approved for this year, and that makes it really challenging for us to continue to serve the parts of the community that are growing really quickly that we know need that service. So for example, Royal Bay is identified to be connected into the frequent transit as a frequent transit corridor. And ideally, if I had the resources, we would be delivering that today. The other thing I'll say too is, in particular, Royal Bay is, I kind of alluded to it in the presentation. I think there's a world where there's a regional express type of service in peak periods that connects people more directly and more quickly to the rest of the transit system, so they can get to a number of key areas within the region more rapidly than would be available on the current network. And that's really around the demand based framework that we're looking to develop. Royal Bay is going to be a key node, and we need to really look at that seriously in the coming years. With respect to digital on demand, how do I explain it really quickly? Some people will call it as like Uber for buses. Essentially what it is it's a bus that anyone in a particular service area can book a ride on their app. And then there's an algorithm on the back end that finds the most efficient way to pick everyone up and drop them off at their destination. Usually how it functions within a transit network is it's a service area in a low density area. So if you want to move within that area, it'll pick you up and drop you off within that area. And usually it ties into a transit exchange or a transit hub, where if you actually want to go elsewhere within the network, it'll take you to the transit hub and then you transfer onto the rapid bus or frequent transit network to get to other parts of the network.
Thank you. I'm looking forward to hearing more about it as it develops. Thank you.
Councillor Grove?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. You've answered so many of the questions already, so that what you're on that last piece. So my thinking is notions I've seen in different cities in Canada now and also around the US of microtransit. I think they call it very small vehicles, which are operated perhaps battery electric, but at lower cost per ride, but yet provide that sort of errand task. So people scooting about the West Shore, BC Transit, the service, it seems to me, has been function of, in my experience, 35 years out here, focused on getting a lot of people moving into the city in the commute kind of corridors. Even your diagrams here kind of show that almost as if it's a bias, because there's a lot of, when I first moved here in 95 to Colwood, a lot of people said, well, it's nice to have a new store like a big box store because we don't have to have one less reason to go into town. It used to be to buy toothpaste, you almost had to go to Uptown. Well, that's long gone. So it's that scoot about requirement of daily living, errand running, that I think and a lot of this conversation is around solutions with that. Is it possible to have a separate transit group, like even a private company that runs small buses around feeding into those hubs you're talking about, with BC Transit concentrating on what they do best or do well, which is moving large numbers of people along major routes?
Yeah, it's a great question. So through the chair, this digital on demand service, we've piloted it in Kelowna. We just recently implemented or extended that pilot to Squamish and to one other community that's I'm blanking on right now. And so in the future, that is something we could consider within this region. Once again, it would be targeted to lower density areas, as I kind of described. So we could do both of those things ourselves in-house, and we just need to do some further analysis and planning work to identify where it might make sense within the West Shore. The other thing I'll say is we know that internal travel within the West Shore is actually the majority of travel for West Shore residents. If you actually look at the CRD's Origin Destination Household Travel Survey, I find another interesting thing to note is that there's a lower proportion of trips within the West Shore that are made on transit versus those interregional trips. So I think there is a real opportunity, especially as the region continues to grow, as these density nodes continue to grow and evolve, to look at transit in a different way to accommodate more of those local trips, as well as still improving those regional and interregional trips as well.
No, thank you. And I have lived in a city where the ownership of a car was impractical, and you could save yourself a lot of money and get all the worries around it. And if we could reach something even partially in that direction, I don't mean for everyone, of course, but thank you very much.
Thanks, Levi. I'll conclude with 4 questions that I have personally, and I don't know if you can even actually answer one, and that is that has to do with the Regional Transit Commission. I had received a letter a couple months ago saying that the West Shore is going to have another seat on the Victoria Regional Transit Commission. I never did understand how people got selected for that in the first place, because you guys happen to pick the mayors of the smallest municipalities, which really made me scratch my head a lot. But we heard about this, and it was supposed to be announced by now. Is this still going to happen?
Yes, thank you. I can answer that question. The BC Transit Act does lay out the composition of the Victoria Regional Transit Commission. It allows for an appointment for 2 representatives from Victoria, 2 from Saanich, 1 from, and more specifically to this region, it would be at least 1 from the West Shore. And at this point in time, there are 2 members representing Metchosin and Souk. So again, those appointments are made at the pleasure of the province.
Yeah, that's, like I said, it makes me scratch our heads a little bit, because, it's clear within Victoria that these are the real results from the Capital Regional District. The fastest 2 growing communities are Langford and Colwood, per capita right now, by far. And in fact, we get stuck with most of the housing requirements from the government, that our targets are a lot higher than our neighbors for some strange reason. And so it's a bit frustrating to me because it goes back to this question I ask you guys every year. I know it's a chicken and egg argument. It really is this question I have. And my frustration is that I realize that you guys rely on data, but you know, your data is a little bit false. It's capturing the real ridership. It really is. But what's happening, you know, I talk to so many of these neighborhood groups, and the frustration is that like a 45-minute service is they're not going to take the bus, right? And they're growing, and this is where there's certain corridors along here, you know, like we said, Royal Bay Beachlands, that is, but all along Latoria now, you know, so it is getting to be very, very frustrating. So, and I kept on saying, well, why don't you guys, I'm not just complaining, I had a solution. I says, so why don't you just trial something, like let's do the egg here or the chicken, whatever your argument is, and why don't we just trial it for a year? Like just increase the service for these areas that we can help you with, like the city of Colwood can help you with, you know, where the populations are and where people are most likely going to use it, and put the bus services out first. And then it's going to take a while because you're going to have to get people knowing that, hey, it's now 15-minute service, you know, that's totally acceptable to me. You know, I would jump aboard that. So, you know, with my own health back at 3 months ago, I had to end up taking transit myself because they wouldn't let me drive my car. And I tell you, like waiting 45 minutes for a bus in front of my house and then having to wait, go down the Colwood Exchange and then taking another bus, I just said, I'm not doing this anymore. Anyway, so I guess so. It's not really a question in there, but it is a frustration. But I do hear you say something and acknowledge something I've never heard in the past 4 years. You're actually acknowledging that the West Shore is growing faster than what you had anticipated. We all saw it because we saw what was happening to us. We knew it was coming. So that's a great acknowledgement. The next question, I really do have a question here for you here. And this is the rapid bus. And if you can remind me, there's enough people in the public here that are here tonight. And if you just can remind me, why did we stop the rapid bus in View Royal? It stops. And why didn't we just continue that through Colwood? Because as pointed out by Council Ward earlier, you know, we had all the intentions when we first heard about this. We says, okay, let's make provisions to ensure we can get rapid bus all the way up Suit Road, you know, maybe up to the Metchosin cutoff, whatever. So why did we stop there? Was it a money situation then?
Oh, so just to confirm, the dedicated transit lanes?
Yes.
It's a great question. I believe that section of the roadway has MOT jurisdiction for a certain component, and we already had the right of way. So it's something we didn't need to get land acquisition, significant private land acquisition to move forward on. The rest of the corridor, we don't currently have the right of way in place. So the first step is really we need to, between all of our organizations, find a way forward to get that right of way. And then once we have the right of way, we can start thinking about a business case to move forward on building the infrastructure. And I will say BC Transit is the first to say, like, we need transit priority on the Island Highway. We move a lot of people via buses on that corridor. In particular, in the AM peak, people are backed up and there's significant travel delay. And I think the biggest bottleneck right now is how do we get that land acquisition and how do we keep this process moving forward? Because until we can figure out a strategy to make sure we can get the right of way needed, the project's going to be waiting. And so, yeah, I think that's the biggest challenge right now is how do we solve that problem so that we can start to plan for the infrastructure business case and all of those other components. If the land was available, I'd be pushing us to try to get that into our shorter term infrastructure priorities for sure for the region.
So do we make that demand through the Regional Transit Commission or do we do it through you? That's $1 million question here. That's what I always find confusing. Who do we talk to?
So maybe I'll take a stab at this and then see if Chris has anything to add. There's a lot of ways you can get the right of way in order to make projects like this work. So it could be through expropriation, either at the provincial or municipal level, or it could be through negotiated purchase. All of the options obviously have trade-offs, challenges and considerations. I think, to my understanding, Colwood's previous approach is as redevelopment occurs to negotiate for that right of way as the development happens. I will just say that if that is the strategy, it may take a long time for the entire corridor to get the right of way needed. And so that is going to continue to be a roadblock for moving those dedicated transit lanes forward, unless we consider other ways of moving things forward more quickly.
Okay, thank you very much. Last question, Levi. And I can say this anecdotally, and I can see it because I saw this data point that we had where we're starting to see that Langford is growing so much, and the commercial amenities are such that people in the West Shore can go to Langford for the majority of their needs. They don't have to drive all the way downtown anymore. So I noticed while I was looking at your bus map there, and like this, I don't think there's enough bus. I'd like to, in my eyes, I think it would be very busy if you had intermunicipal between Colwood and surrounding areas. I think it's powerful. So who do I go to ask for someone to look at something like that? Because it's also got the pluses of it. You'd be able to get onto the rapid buses in Langford, right? Or you can go, the service there is phenomenal. It's 13 minutes or whatever it is. It's pretty phenomenal there. So is there someone that we can ask for is that something that BC Transit, could you do a study, or how do we go about doing that?
Yeah, it's a great question. So one of those big goals in the plan is to modernize the transit network. And that is one of the few priorities that we can start almost immediately, because part of that process is understanding, is there a way we could utilize our existing resources in a slightly different way? And so over the 2 years after we get the Victoria Regional Transit Plan approved, there is an intent to take a look at the broader regional transit network in relation to the new network and route design guidelines, and explore opportunities to do things a little bit differently, especially as we've seen significant changes in where development's happening, where people want to go. So that is currently the plan, is over the 2 years after the plan is complete, to do a major review of the transit network involving multiple phases of public engagement and just looking at how we can do things a little differently. And the West Shore is certainly one of those areas we'd be looking to. The one other thing, I did want to speak to some of your previous comments that didn't actually include a specific question, because it is a real challenge. And so I just want to lay out a little bit of the framework that we're faced with right now. So over the last 10 years, we've been seeing the average speed of the transit system decrease by about 1 to 1.5% every year. And so that is a significant amount of resources every year just to tread water, just to maintain our existing service. So even though we've been on average expanding by about 2%, 75% of that expansion is just going to mitigating the increases in delay and traffic congestion. And so I think that's really why we're outlining the importance of us all working together on the future of transit within the region. And we all have a really important part to play. In particular, when you look at the current provincial budget situation, right? Like there's opportunities that we can all look at in the short, medium, and longer term to try to squeeze more value out of our transit system and deliver more service levels and ridership for the communities that we serve. So I just wanted to outline that. Like, we wish we could provide way more service to the West Shore, and we're just challenged to do that with the current context.
Thanks very much. Seeing no other questions, I'd just like to thank you for coming out. I always enjoy your presentations, and this one was even better, so thank you.
Thank you so much for having us.
Okay, we'll move on to item 7, which is the consent agenda. Is there anyone that wants any item removed from the consent agenda? Okay, Councilor Day, what would you like removed?
7.3, and just briefly to outline some information that's in that report.
We'll pull it off, and that will become 8 points. Help me, corporate officer, 8.3? 8.4. Okay, thank you very much. And can I get a motion for the consent agenda, please? Okay, Council Olson, second, Council Ward. Discussion, seeing none, call the question. Any opposed? Motion carries. So we'll move on to new business, sewer survey results. Over to you, Mr. Johnson, if you can introduce the speaker.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. This is the sewer survey results. Tyler Pettepiece is our capital projects lead. Will providing council with an overview. The recommendation is that council receive the results of the sewer expansion community survey, and that council directs staff to develop a draft sewer conversion program, including potential project groupings and prioritization. And further, that staff return to council with a draft sewer conversion program and recommend next steps, including a proposed approach to targeted engagement with affected property owners in candidate project areas.
Okay, great. I don't think it's Tyler. You don't look like Tyler.
No, yeah, unfortunately.
Is it you, John, or Joshua?
It's going to be me tonight, Your Worship.
Okay, please,
We have a presentation. It's about 8 slides. Nothing in the presentation really differs from the report itself. 428 responses, which according to the experts is more than enough to say it's valid, which is nice to know. 43% is still on septic. We have 57 zones. It's 103 million is an estimated cost. I mean, obviously we're not going to do a lot with that kind of money until we get grants and so on moving forward. And we've talked about it with regards to universal costs. Interest in connecting is not bad. I actually can't read these that well. It's fairly evenly split between the two. I think what is of note is that once you start getting into costs, most people don't want to spend any more than 30,000. So I think that's a real divider. And one of the things is less than half of the zones actually cost less than 30. So significant amount of the zones are estimated to be more than 30,000. Other than that, there's a limited support for universal. Again, people aren't interested in saying, okay, I'm not sure what my costs are, but I don't want to pay for my neighbor's costs. So again, there wasn't really a lot looking for with the universal. So the cost averaging wasn't accepted well. 368 by zone, 33 zones actually got a response. 13 of the zones are in an area where you go, maybe we should think about it. The interesting part there is we really didn't have an overwhelming response in any zone. Some of the zones, if you want to look at a positive, 20% was really high. That said yes to that. The other one was 33%, but 33% of 3 of 9 people. So we didn't contact the other 6. So nothing really jumps out saying, the question is, if you look at statistics, it's reliable in that if there's a 20% yes, then that means there's some interest there. My own lens from experience in doing this for 30 years is that if you are interested in having your sewer connected, you probably would have done the survey. So I feel like there wasn't enough interest in you wanting the sewer to look at the survey and spend the 10 minutes putting it in. So that does cause me to pause to think, is there any effort to be put forward on staff's behalf, on behalf of council? So that's what we're looking for tonight is, do you want us to actually dig in deep, see if there's a couple neighborhoods that might be interested, and if so, come back to you with those neighborhoods, and then reach out to those specific neighborhoods with a cost estimate saying, this is what it would cost, and would you be interested in doing it? So that's really what tonight's recommendation is would you like us to dig a little deeper? I can say that from a staff perspective, we are challenged. We did say the fall here, I'd be doubtful if I could get something. I definitely couldn't get something to get this council before the election. It would be sometime in the future past that, and might even be into 2027. We are at a capacity issue right now concerning workload. And I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have. And if I don't have the answer, Joshua, I'm sure will help you.
Thanks very much, John. Councillor Grove, please.
Thank you, Mayor. Is it right now, if a street would like sewer, they can lobby or request that the city organize a pipe down the street if they're all paying for it, or if there are individuals willing to front the cost. Can you explain? I understand that's the way it is, if that's true, but could you explain that process to me?
Sure, through the chair. Basically what happens now is somebody can come in and say, hey, I'd like to get sewer. And we go, okay, where do you live? And we take a look at it and we'll say to them, okay, well, you have your zone is like 40 houses or 20 houses, 30 houses. And we go, go out and see if you can get some of your neighbors to tell us they're interested as well. Here's a piece of paper, a questionnaire on it. Go around and see if you can get 10 or 12 names on it. If they can come back with 10 or 12 names, you know, say on a 30 zone area, if it's a 100 zone area, then we'd like to see 20 plus. Then we'll start putting a little bit of effort in, and then we'll go and look at the zoning, see what the map says, you know, put a bit of an eye to it to go, okay, does that current zone make sense? Is there a lift station that's required? What are the estimated costs? So we'll give them that number. And if they're still interested, then we look at sending out a letter to everybody. If everybody gets a letter, you need to have a majority yes before it even moves forward.
And that goes by zone, not by
Correct.
a street.
There are some streets that would be serviced by 2 different zones.
Right, but if it was like a cul-de-sac with 12 homes or 20 homes, could they apply?
Correct.
So it doesn't have to be the whole zone.
That's correct.
And then the other question I have about the septic is simply that, do we have any information in the city about the environmental effects of the sewage flow that's running through the septic systems, which adds up? It's a fairly significant number.
We do not have any information on that.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks. Councillor Day.
Thank you. I noted that the recommendation was that staff develop a draft sewer conversion program. And while I'm not looking to limit anybody's opportunities, I'm also aware that you are up against it in terms of the amount of things that you already have on your plate. And there's going to be some significant changes probably in the coming years, because we are going to bump up against our limits because councils have approved more development in the past couple of terms than was originally envisioned when we signed up for our flows with the CRD. So just because we're probably rapidly going to reach our capacity in those lines, and because there may be new information in the future, I feel like it would probably make more sense to follow the process that we currently have, which is that if there is a group of residents who wish to petition for sewer through a local area service, that they can do so. It still puts the onus on you to service that request, but at least we're not asking you to do that work without a bona fide interest being present. I noted that there's a number of areas that were not at all interested in sewers, and sometimes the other end of the street is quite interested in sewers. But at no point in the survey numbers that I looked at did I notice any real strong mandate to provide that. So I just feel we shouldn't be putting the burden on our staff to do work that the environment may change substantially in the near future.
Thank you. Yes. Was there? Oh, okay, I got it. Go ahead, Councillor Jensen.
Thank you, and that's fantastic from John. And just a couple of quick questions. Is there an opportunity in here? I mean, I hear your general comments, but is there an opportunity that you see in any of these results that really council should be exploring? I guess is the first question.
If I'm being completely honest, I haven't done a deep dive into the results. I've glanced at an Excel table showing me the responses. We have had an internal discussion. One area I thought was pretty high, but then it needed another area to go first before we got to that area. So it was, and that area was not interested in doing it. So it's like to get to the area that is, you have to go through an area that isn't. So it quite likely wouldn't occur. So I think there's a couple that are maybe like that, but I did not see anything that were really, like I said, I think the highest was 33%, and that was 3 of 9. I did not see anything that jumped out at me and said 47 of 132 in a zone or something like that.
Yeah, so I didn't see anything that was off the charts either. So I would kind of agree with your assessment, but I have concerns about the amount of staff time this is going to take, and I think, quite frankly, that we have a process. The only thing I would add to staff, yourself, and by way of Mr. Johnson, that it's really not very well advertised what that process is. There isn't a button on the website that says "click here" if you are thinking about sewer, and here's the defined process. And please speak with your neighbors, and then come in and have a meeting with staff. And like, it doesn't really define that any. So it's kind of mysterious, and I think we can take some of the mystery out of it. And I agree along the same lines as Councillor Day that I don't think we need to upset the apple cart and introduce a lot of staff time into this at this point in time. I really thought we might see some overwhelming results, and that's not clear. But can I hear back from staff on sort of identifying the process a little more fulsomely and outlining it, with a couple of clicks?
That is certainly not my forte to develop a website or work on that, but I feel like a few hours with Sandra and giving her an idea of what that process looks like, and using one of our engineering techs, we could clean up something that looks a little better on the website to give them an idea of how to move forward.
So I think I would love that. Let's just simplify it a little bit and define the process, because we all know what that process is, or we've heard about it multiple times. And then I think the path forward for me would be less is more in this regard, because it's not overwhelming. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much, Councillor Ward, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think I'd just like to go back to the intent of the survey. We seem to have jumped right to the idea that this might lead us to initiate city, staff action in terms of planning to implement sewer expansion, that kind of thing. I think from my perspective, the goal was really to inform. It was to gather data, and it was to not only for council and staff, but I think for the community. Anecdotally, I heard a lot about sewers. When I went door to door, 3.5 years ago, I heard more about sewers than I'd ever heard in my life. And I really, I'm fortunate. My home has sewer connections, so I didn't realize it was such a hot button issue. So, I was careful not to make any promises about it, because as I rightly assumed, it was very complicated. So for me, the outcomes here do necessitate staff action, but not in planning to implement change necessarily, but more to communicate effectively to people. It won't put it to bed, but I think it settles it for some term. I think, there was a referendum many years ago, and probably for a brief period after that, I'm operating under assumption here, but it probably put the issue to bed, so to speak, for a brief period, right? And then over time, as more people moved into the community, bought a home on septic, eventually came time to replace that septic, they probably went, why am I not on sewer, right? So I think we have a duty to take these results and condense them and put them into layperson language, to go out and say, okay, we did this survey, it's statistically accurate, outline all of that information. And indicate in there some of the responses. Like, it's interesting to note that 95% of the people that responded were on septic, for example. So these were people who were actively thinking about sewer. People like me, if they're not in politics locally and they have sewer, they don't care. They're not thinking about it. But I also found it interesting that of those 95% of folks there, over 70% of them said we wouldn't want to spread out the cost of going to sewer across the whole community. Pretty good neighbors, I would say. There's some interesting statistics in there, but overall, when you break it down, most people did not want to move forward. There were pockets that said yay, but really it's pretty limited. Overall, it's fair to say that they didn't. And I think there's a lot of reasons for that. Septic's cost. A lot of people may have just done it in the last couple of years. Doesn't make sense for them to be forced into a situation to pay 40 grand to do that. So I think we have to communicate the results out in a way to say, look, it's not that council doesn't care, or that staff don't care, or we don't feel you deserve sewer, or it's too expensive. It's you know, we've done the information, we've done the homework, this is it. I think the second piece of that I think taking out of this, and this feeds on something Councillor Day, to her credit, has spoken about significantly, is future capacity. We are well ahead of our housing targets, as we know, and the province will continue to push that on us. But you know, we could run out of allotted CRD sewer capacity in as little as 10 years. That's feasible. And then we start paying more for that. So I would like to see an action item out of this where we approach the CRD and the province and say, okay, we're doing our part. We're densifying in areas. We're building a lot in Royal Bay and elsewhere. What is your long-term plan to increase sewer capacity? Because we could run out of 10 years. The McLaughlin Point wastewater plant took 8 years from project initiation to completion. So it's never too early to start thinking about this. So I think it would behoove us just to, you know, to start asking that question that, hey, you know, the provincial government wants to push housing in every corner of our community. Well, there's got to be a trade-off there. We need to know that something's coming. So I would like to see that. But generally speaking, I think the outcome for me is that I don't want to lay more on staff beyond compiling this into some sort of communication that can be part of a larger communication, like a quarterly report. But beyond that, I would say we stay with the status quo, but we need to tell people why, not just make a motion on it. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Could you answer that question, either John or Joshua? You've been part of the CRD discussions. Now they're talking 2030 to start up the discussions for the next sewage treatment plant, are they not? I forget what the year was. Don't quote me. If I say something, then it'll probably be inaccurate.
Thank you, Your Worship. I would also reserve the right to go back and double check, but I believe it was around 2030, and it's also relative to capacity limits and the amount that are being used up. So I don't think it is specific with a date. There might be a bit of a range.
Right.
But I know that there are conversations happening now in regards to that anyway.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Councillor Grove.
Yeah, I would just like to add to it, everybody's comments here. Simply, I think the idea of having a sewer navigator button on the website is a good one, and for me solves the short-term problem out, which is basically continuing on the path we're on, but just giving people a little bit more. It's taken me a bit of time to try to figure out what a neighbor of mine is interested in terms of sewer, and so that would help. The CRD action plan, I think, is interesting, but I'm not at all interested in seeing an overall action plan for sewer in Colwyn at this time. That wasn't, at least I wasn't thinking that way. So if we could somehow frame this recommendation with that simple, I call it simple, but call it the sewer navigator button on the website or some such. I'm not quite sure how to go about it, but anyway, I'll defer to Councillor Ward. I think he has got some comments.
Okay, thanks very much. So I just have two questions before I go to second time to Councillor Ward. My first question is, are there any areas where environmental or septic system failure is sufficiently high that we'd have to prioritize it? Is there anything near creeks or anything like that that you can think of right now? Because we've always looked at this as a demand thing, but I'm looking at it from if there was a system failure and the potential of polluting our water systems right now. So is there anything that's been identified by engineering on this?
We haven't heard anything with regards to putting into jeopardy other environmental things like water systems or those types of things. Interior Health actually runs the septic system applications and so on. So that's obviously part of their bailiwick with regards to water and treatment of water and so on, with parameters for NTU and different things. At the end of the day, we get the odd person that calls in about their septic system failing. Again, we don't get into the parameters of that. So it could be because the system's old. It could be a distribution problem. It could be lack of maintenance. We have not found an area in town where and generally if you've got clay beds or something like that that just don't percolate at all, that's where you'd have those problems. I mean, we haven't found an overly high area where it's like, oh, we've had 4 phone calls in this area because a bunch of people's systems have failed all at once or anything. We haven't seen that.
Okay, yeah, that's great. I just wanted to confirm that. And the second question that I have is I thought it was kind of clever what planning did when we approved that the apartments or rentals or whatever we're doing over on Souk Road, where we got the developer to put in the sewage, right? The sewer lines. I thought that was a pretty clever way of doing that, you know, and then I guess the neighbors in that area just have to pay the connection fees. Is that something we can continue to do? I don't know. Is that sort of a, you're smiling, John, you're making me worried. But it's just a question I have, you know, to make it more affordable for people if they want to do this. I don't know. I'm just asking. It's
We talked earlier tonight about a chicken and an egg. This one's a little different, but it's kind of the same in that, if you'll remember, your worship, back then with Linlark, that was part of the negotiated outcome for the extra density.
yes.
To give the residents something that they could get a value for having to tolerate the extra density in that area.
Yes.
The developer offered up that extension of the sewer system. And we had recently done work on Souk Road that allowed that to occur, and council, in their wisdom, said yes to that.
Yeah.
So certainly, moving forward, anytime there's a development that's anywhere near that sewer system, that is something that we can look at. And we often do that through latecomers agreements where we have developers extend the system past properties to go to the development. And then if you want to hook up coming back, we give the developer a latecomer, which means the residents then have to pay for that installation of that pipe and give the money back to the developer. If you didn't grant the latecomer to the developer, then the developer would have to take that burden on, and the residents that fronted that development along that the pipe was extended wouldn't have to pay. So that would be an option where council could consider that sometime in the future.
Okay, thank you. That answers my question. Thank you. I will go to Council Ward.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I might be getting ahead here in assuming this, but I believe that the feeling is the status quo is the most logical approach. Certainly that's my take. I think we can get creative in individual scenarios. We can have people come forward, you know, on a piecemeal basis as we kind of do. So I want to move option 3, receive survey results and maintain the status quo. But I did want to add an additional sentence to that. And that council directs staff to provide a concise and clear summary of survey results indicating why the status quo approach. So I would add that to option 3. Hopefully I didn't go too fast there, Marcy. I just think you always have to give the why behind a decision to people. And I think we did a survey, so we owe it to the folks that contributed to it, those who might have seen it, and those who might have missed it, but are interested in sewer, to tell them that this is the, you know, the approach we're going to take.
Can I get a seconder, please? Okay, thank you.
Sorry, and I would just add one point, maybe just for the record. I had this conversation with Councillor Olson before as well, is that one of the biggest concerns you hear in the community is with missing middle. Some of the folks who came forward talked about that earlier. There are folks in our community who are really concerned that, you know, they've lived in their home 20 years and one day they'll wake up and the next door neighbor is going to cash in and build a 6-plex, and then the neighbor next door will build a 4-plex. And what many of them may not realize is being on septic is a safeguard against that. With Bill 44 and the legislation, you know, you can't just go do that. You need to be on sewer. So they may not realize it, but I think in many ways that's what's kept large sections of Colwood. I call them sort of the legacy neighborhoods with the really big lots. That's kept them free of some of the, what some would term gentle infill, but others would see as pretty obtrusive. So, you know, just as a side note, I think it's an interesting thing. Again, when it comes to the why, a lot of people might not realize that that's why they've been able to dodge that bullet. So anyway, just was on the top of my head, so I had to throw it out there.
Okay. Council Grove second that, by the way. Discussion on the option 3 on the motion on the floor. Councillor Day, please.
Thank you. I just think that and further, that doesn't quite capture what I heard in the discussion here. We're looking to provide information on how to apply for sewers on the website, I believe.
Certainly. Council Ward in the meantime.
Sorry, I may consent to that because that would be an amendment to my motion.
Yeah.
My only concern is that there's overall issues with the website. It's a larger issue. I don't disagree with you, Councillor Day. I think we need to do that. I just worry that if we put this in here, do we now delay communicating survey results? Or perhaps we could amend the wording to say, you know, including as a secondary phase with any website development to add the you know, the sewer service, because my concern frankly is that we need to revamp the website. We need to do it pretty quickly, but how long will that take? Are we going to sidetrack this? So perhaps through the chair, I see Mr. Johnson wants to talk.
I know exactly what he's going to say. Mr. Johnson, go ahead, please.
I think council's motion should stand up with the understanding that the website will change, but this should get information up for the public right away. And then with that website reorganization, we can reorganize that at that time as well. So that shouldn't hold that up. We can have those sewer results with the summary and with what council's direction has been. That can happen pretty quickly and in conjunction with the website review that will be underway.
Okay, in that case, I would just take it as a friendly amendment.
Okay.
Leave it as
And that
Just-
seconder is okay with the friendly amendment? Okay, thank you.
I could just motivate a little bit, just because I know that we did create already a guide for the potential development of sewer for residents, how to apply, how to approach council with a local area service request.
Thank you. I just want to make sure, John and Joshua, are you clear on what that requirement is? So we're basically on record, and tell me if I'm wrong, Council Ward, we're basically put on record why we're just leaving it as status quo because of results.
100% agree, Your Worship.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. And on that note, seeing no other discussion, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? Seeing none, motion carries unanimous. Thank you. Thank you very much. And I just want to take a 5-minute health recess, please, at this time. We'll reconvene at just after 5 after 8, please. Thank you. Okay, thanks very much, everyone, for taking a little bit of a break there. We'll move on to, I'll call us out of recess. I'll move on to item 8.2, which is policy project update. Mr. Johnson, if you could lead us through that, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. This is just an update report that you will be seeing a reprioritization coming back to council with some additional project work that can be completed. This is as a result of development activity. Development activity is lower than what we'd expected when our original report came through to you in February. We have some more staff capacity in order for council to look at those items that have come up since those items which you really originally looked at in February. Things like the gentle infill strategy, the Outlook park management plan, age-friendly plan review, and public art policy. These will be all in a report with recommendations for council at the next council meeting so that council can determine next steps and prioritize in staff's time.
I'll open it up for questions. Councillor Day, please.
Not a question, just a comment that I really appreciate getting the update on when it's coming forward so that we are prepared. And I would like to move for receipt of the information.
Okay, thank you very much. Second, thank you, Councillor Grove. Any further discussion? Seeing, sorry, try to move it too quickly here. Councillor Ward, please.
Apologize for slowing things down, but just on the public art policy component, if I don't, maybe I recall incorrectly, but during the budget discussions, there was funding there that we removed because that wasn't going to happen this year. So I was just curious how that plays out here. I believe the funding was to work with an external partner to develop a public art policy. And the reason for that, if I'm not mistaken, was to get expertise on public art rather than a city developed policy, unless in the interim we've hired an art expert. So I just kind of wonder why that would appear there.
Mr. Johnson, or can someone answer that? Mairi?
Yeah, thank you very much for the question. So we will certainly provide more detail on June 8th about why that project is there, but it is sort of a reflection from the conversations that did happen at the council table surrounding public art. There are a lot of previous council directions that we have received as well about a public art policy, and it's not necessarily just for the bridge specifically. It's a general citywide public art policy that we do not have.
Okay, thank you for the context. Appreciate it, Mairi. Thank you.
Thanks very much. I'm going to call the question. Any opposed to receiving? Seeing none, motion carries. We'll move on to 8.3. Decision points for council for amendments to delegated authority for form and character development permits. Over to you, Mr. Johnson, again, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is the recommendation is that council direct staff to amend the development permit delegation bylaw number 1742, 2018 as follows: form and character development permit approvals general approach. The council approve a hybrid approach whereby form and character development permits for developments of more than 4 units within the following development permit areas are approved by council, with all other form and character development permits remaining delegated to staff around centers, mixed-use employment areas, neighborhood, hillside, light industrial, and that master planned communities that council retain delegated authority within those sub areas of master planned communities that are subject to council approved design guidelines. For example, the Commons in Latoria South sub area plan, the Landing in Royal Beach or Beachlands sub area plan, and require council approval for development permits outside of those defined sub areas, and that require council approval for development permits where land ownership is transferred from the original developer to a third party owner within those sub areas. In-stream development applications that council direct staff that no in-stream protection be provided for development permit applications that have been submitted but not issued prior to the adoptions of the amendments of the development permit delegation bylaw. And number 4, scope of delegated approval authorities that council retain delegated authority for the determination and release of development permit security, retain delegated authority for development permit extensions, require council approval for major amendments that materially affect or alter form and character development permits approved by council, retain delegated authority for minor development permit amendments that do not result in substantive changes to form, character, or the layout, delegate authority to development permits that vary land use regulations for developments of 4 units or less, limited to minor variances where the proposal is consistent with the OCP designations, and retain council approval to consider approval of all other development permit variances, and that council directs staff to return with an amending bylaw to the development permit delegation bylaw number 172 to 2018 for the consideration of first, second, and third readings. This is following up on council's direction. And before we brought a bylaw forward, what you'll see in this report is we have a number of decision points for council to make to provide us the direction as to how you would like this to see this come forward. And we have Mairi Bosomworth, our manager of planning, with a presentation should you wish to receive it, Mr. Mayor. And
Yes, we would actually. Mairi, please.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you. And good evening, Mayor and Council. So yes, this presentation is discussing the delegated authority framework for development permits. What I hope to do this evening is to provide you the information that you need in order to make those key decision points that are identified within the staff recommendation. A lot of these key decision points are around how to decide what development permits should be approved by council versus what development permit should be approved by staff. Okay, oh, previous one. I do have some background slides. I'm going to go through them fairly quickly. These are things that we have discussed quite a bit at the council table, but I think it is important to kind of lay the groundwork. The previous slide was just about the background. So this conversation started through a notice of motion that was introduced to council in January. Ultimately, council passed the recommendation to direct staff to develop a comprehensive report. So that is why we are here this evening. The high-level overview of this topic is about shifting the approval of development permits from staff back to council for approval. And the general intent around that is to improve transparency around developments and what they ultimately look like. Right now, council does not have the ability to comment on a development and what it will ultimately look like when it's developed. Council only has a decision right now on what a property will be zoned. We will get into the discussions about master plan communities and our current development approvals process, but generally, as Jason mentioned previously, we are seeing a decline in development applications right now. It is a historical low, and that really is dependent on the market and where that situation is right now. But it does provide an opportunity for us to review this delegated authority and provide council the opportunity to provide feedback on what developments ultimately do look like. So legislative changes, this is something we have discussed significantly in the past couple of years, and what the impacts of this new legislation is. Kind of the high level gist of it is that Bill 44 and Bill 47 are essentially requiring municipalities to permit or change their planning processes, which ultimately has in some cases removed rezoning applications. So for Bill 44, we must permit 3 to 6 units on lots that meet that criteria. In some of those cases before Bill 44, these properties would have required a rezoning application. And so council would have a say on that development. Similar to Bill 47, it is requiring us to enable specific heights and densities within proximity to the Colwood bus exchange. Although these developments still require a rezoning, council is not able to deny that rezoning application on the basis that they don't feel that the height and the density are appropriate. What these legislative changes are really doing is placing more emphasis on the development permit stage. As I mentioned, a lot of this legislative change is removing that rezoning step. And currently, under our delegated authority framework, council has no say on the development permit. And so with these legislative changes, it is removing council's ability to comment on development within the city. So development approvals, also another topic we have discussed a lot at the council table lately, but just highlighting the two key issues that we are seeing with our current development approvals process. Number one is the uncertainty around timing of development. We have rezoning applications. We have no requirement for a development permit to be submitted, or we have no trigger. And so what we have been seeing is properties will be rezoned and then they will sit vacant for 10, 15 years. This makes it very difficult for residents and council and staff to understand when a property will be developed. It makes it really difficult from a staff perspective when we're doing budget forecasting and unit forecasting, as we don't have a crystal ball. We cannot predict when those developments will be built. The second main issue with our development approvals is about what a development will actually look like. So rezoning applications go to council, plans are shown at that time, but as we've mentioned, those are conceptual in nature. That is one way that that development will meet those proposed zoning regulations. Once an application is submitted for development permit, it may look completely different, but still comply with those zoning regulations that were ultimately adopted by council, but still look different. Council in February directed staff to prioritize a review of our development approvals process. We have submitted for that grant through UBCM, so we are patiently awaiting the results of that grant so we can get going on that work. But as part of that, we will be exploring the concurrent rezoning and development permit application process, which will sort of resolve those two issues that we have been experiencing with our existing development approvals. So that's the background information. Now getting into the main topic of this evening is around those key decision points for council. So number one is the general approach. So what this means is what development permits should be approved by council versus staff. This list before you is the list of our form and character development permit areas. We will get into the landing and the commons in a few minutes. The intensive residential, so on May 11th, council directed staff to amend the OCP to remove that form and character development permit requirement for lots under 550 meters squared and for SMU developments of 3 or 4 units. So that will kind of resolve that intensive residential development permit requirement. This slide just shows a map of our development permit areas, but generally they align with our land use designations. So staff's recommendation this evening is to approve a hybrid approach, but generally all development permits within those development permit areas identified before you, the centers, mixed use employment center, neighborhood, hillside, and light industrial would be approved by council. What that will do is you will see all types of developments such as townhomes, multifamily, mixed use, and industrial. So under this hybrid framework, those applications would be approved by council. It's the more minor applications like the SMUs would be approved by staff. The next decision point is around our master plan community. So within our OCP, we have a number of sub-area plans or local area plans, and there are a handful that have their own design guidelines. So these developers have gone beyond what our existing general city development design guidelines are, and they've developed their own for site specific. So those are Latoria South, Ocean Grove, and Royal Beach or Beachlands. So when we receive development permit applications within those areas, we assess those applications against these more detailed design guidelines. It has been acknowledged that they have gone sort of an extra step in their planning approach, and that applications within those sub areas would be appropriate for staff approval given that they have those specific design guidelines. Now, the map on the left shows Latoria South. So they have the Commons design guidelines, which applies to the areas that are shaded in orange. The areas outside of those orange areas, so the areas shown in hatched, those common design guidelines do not apply. And so it is our general city design guidelines that apply. On the right is a map of Beachlands. they have the landing design guidelines. So the areas shaded in brown is where those landing design guidelines apply. Outside of that, shown in the hatched areas, is where just our general city design guidelines apply. So one of the decisions that council will have to make is where will staff approval be appropriate versus council approval? Is it appropriate for staff to approve development permits just within those areas shaded as orange or brown? Or is it appropriate for staff to approve all development permits within Latoria South and Beachlands? I would say based on our experience, particularly with Latoria South, as it is fairly built out, that the form and character, if it is being built by the original developer, will be similar in those areas shown in hatched versus the areas shown in orange. It's the same developer, they have the same standards, even though from a staff perspective, we are not assessing those applications against the Commons Design Guidelines. It is still consistent form and character, I would say, given that it's the same developer. So the staff recommendation for those master plan communities is to retain delegated authority within those sub areas of master plan communities that are subject to those design guidelines. So the commons and the landing, to require council approval for DPs outside of those defined sub areas. So this is currently right now, the staff recommendation is saying those hatched areas are appropriate for council approval. And then the final recommendation is to require council approval for development permits where there is a change in ownership from the original developer. And then the next decision point for council is in-stream protection process. And so in-stream protection has to be considered. The Local Government Act does not provide any requirements for council to provide in-stream protection. So it is ultimately up to council to decide. This list before you is a list of development permit applications that are active. So they have submitted their application, but they are not yet issued. These applications all range in where they are at within their application process. Some of them we have received more recently, so they're in the initial referral process. Some are closer to issuance. Some of these applications have recently gone to council as part of a rezoning application or a development variance permit application as well. But of course, council would not have actually reviewed or commented on the form and character. So the staff recommendation this evening, based on that list before you, and considering the recommendations that staff are providing, the majority of those applications do meet the criteria for council approval. And so the recommendation this evening is to provide no in-stream protection for those applications. I would say on an interim step, when we're amending the delegated authority, we are recommending for those applications to proceed straight to council instead of going to planning and land use first and then council. I think the ultimate plan, though, would be for development permits that they would go to planning and land use first and then council for approval, similar to our process for DVPs and rezonings. I would also say, given our volumes of development applications right now, we're not expecting, if these applications have to go to council, for them to delay the process too much. We do have capacity, and because we're reviewing these development permits anyways, we have all the information to put into a staff report. So just a little more context for you there. And then finally,
could you just go back? So I'm sorry.
Oh, yes.
I want to clearly understand this. It is, you're saying one thing here on your table, and then you're saying you're not. So the ones that are almost, so what you're saying to us right now, the ones that are very close to issuance, you still say no in-stream protection then?
That is the staff recommendation,
Okay.
yes.
I want to make sure I was clear on that. Okay.
Yes.
Thank you. Go ahead, please. Sorry.
And then the last decision point is the scope of delegated authority. So right now, the delegated authority bylaw provides full authority to staff for approval, but that also includes imposing conditions, requiring security, amending development permits, and extending development permits. So thinking about each of those independently, development permit extension. So we amended the fees and charges bylaw last year to add a development permit extension fee. We were receiving many more requests for extensions and we didn't have a formal process. Our sort of internal process is that we would consider one extension up to 1 year for development permits. That is not formally in our land use application procedures bylaw, but we will be integrating that as part of our development approvals process. Just a reminder that development permits do expire within 2 years after issuance unless construction has substantially started. The amendments to development permits. So these are amending development permits that have already been issued, and we do get these requests. They do range from minor, so that would be a change in landscaping or moving a window or a door, to more major amendments such as a change in a site plan, increasing or decreasing units, which would impact parking and site layout, or a change in floor area for commercial developments. DP security, so we require a landscape plan and a cost estimate at the time of development permit, and we take 110% of security at the time of building permit. This is a very prescribed process that's within that delegated authority bylaw. It's also identified in the OCP and it's required in the Local Government Act. And then finally, variances. So our variance requests also range from minor to major, and we do have minor variance requests to a single family for a setback. And then we can also get more substantial variance requests such as parking or retaining walls, or particularly for larger developments. So based on all of that, we have a number of staff recommendations. First is to retain delegated authority for the determination and release of DP security. So as I mentioned, this is a very prescribed process. We feel that it's appropriate for that to remain at the staff level. Next is to retain delegated authority for development permit extensions. As I mentioned, we have a pretty set process that we would allow for a 1-year extension one time. Next is require council approval for major amendments that materially alter a form and character development permit approved by council. So that would all go to council for approval. Retain delegated authority for minor DP amendments that did not result in substantive changes to the form, character, or site layout. And we would ensure that those minor amendments still meet the intent of the original development permit and ensure that it still complies with the design guidelines. And this would be up to the delegated authority to determine if it's minor in nature. Delegate authority to issue DPs that vary land use regulations for developments of 4 units or less. So this is a new sort of delegated authority framework, but allowing staff to approve minor variances for essentially single family homes or smaller SMU developments. And then finally, to retain council approval for all other development variance permits. So that is the presentation this evening. Again, our focus is on those key decision points for council, but the next steps is we'll take the feedback we hear from council this evening, and then we will return with an amending bylaw. So this is just sort of our first chance to discuss these amendments, but there's still opportunity to for council to direct staff for any other amendments that you want to consider. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Great presentation.
Mr. Mayor, if I can also just mention, thank you to the presentation for Mairi. Council will notice in your agenda package, there was quite a bit of feedback from the development community with that in-stream applications and that they were looking for some protection with that. Of course, before we came back to council, we wanted to make sure that we had council's clear direction so that those bylaws match what council intends to do with the feedback that we've received.
Okay, thanks so much. I'll go to questions at this point in time until we get a motion on the floor. Councillor Day.
Thank you. As I was reading through this, and I thank you for a very clear presentation. As I was reading the report, I was finding it difficult to kind of sum up the 1, 2, 3, and 4. But the presentation does a very good job of making that a lot smoother in my brain. But I did have a concern that because we're in a hybrid system, that there could be some back and forth around what the process will be, and wondering if you had considered that in bringing this forward. Did you consider that the hybrid might cause confusion?
And just to clarify, you mean back and forth when we're considering the appropriate amendments to the delegated authority bylaw?
I meant the back and forth in terms of what the community is looking to see come out of this. So I think we're trying to address the fact that sometimes developments have been happening in Colwood where they look very different when they materialize, or they don't materialize at all for many, many years. And then something happens and no one on council or of the public really isn't in the loop. So in trying to address that, we're keeping some are delegated where we've already approved guidelines, for example, and some are going to come directly to council because staff is going to basically do all of the work that they would have done approving it and put it forward in a report to us. So now everyone is involved, but that could cause some confusion where members of the community or developers aren't sure what the process is. And just wondering, was there anything that you considered in developing this to address that?
Yeah, thank you. I would say the majority of development permits under this recommended framework will require council approval. It is the master plan communities that would be exempted, and then 3 or 4 units and less. However, when staff does come forward with the amendment to the OCP to remove that form and character development permit, that won't even be approved by staff because we won't even have those development permits anymore. I would say this is a change in process, so we will have to have adequate messaging going out to members of our community, the development community, to ensure that they are aware of our change in process. And that's something that we will have to do when we're updating our development approvals process at a high level as well. This is an interim step before we officially update our other development approvals. So when we do undergo a comprehensive review of our land use application procedures bylaw, we will consider this delegated authority framework and how that integrates with, for example, a concurrent DP and rezoning application. So I see this as an interim step, but you're certainly correct that we will have to put out messaging.
And I'm just wondering, in terms of, we had tried to move towards, and it's taken a long time to get there, towards site adaptive planning processes. And I've just been noticing that a number of developments that are proceeding currently maybe haven't considered certain aspects to the land, like where I know there are pockets of really good soil, for example, and there's a townhouse development going in, and it doesn't appear, to have been considered in the plan. Is that something that where site-specific issues are a part of a plan coming forward? Is this going to change that in any way?
So site adaptive planning is a requirement for properties within our neighborhood hillside designation. So that is a requirement as part of rezoning applications. We also have a number of design guidelines that speak to site adaptive planning within those areas. So that is part of an environmental development permit. So that is another type of development permit that we receive is a joint form and character and environmental development permit. If it meets the criteria for that form and character, then it would be approved by council. So you would still have the ability to review those applications in a more environmentally sensitive area.
Okay, thank you. And just for those areas where we may have less than 4 unit applications, which your suggested motion puts to the delegated format, would that potentially be something that you could bring a list forward to council on a quarterly basis, whether to do them one way or the other?
We could certainly bring like a status list to council of the development permits that have been approved by staff.
I was thinking in terms of would there be an opportunity to choose to have some applications come to council?
So under the current direction from staff, that those development permits for 3 or 4 units would be approved by staff. It would ultimately be up to that delegated authority personnel to direct an application to go to council. So there's always that option for the CAO or the director of planning to refer an application to council. I would say if we are retaining delegated authority for 3 or 4 units, council would likely not have the opportunity to request that application to council unless we gave you a list of development permit applications that we have received for 3 or 4 units or less. And you could request, you could direct staff to bring them to council. We would have to determine what a proper process would be for that.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Johnson, please.
These are measures that we would take obviously council's direction on, and we would be doing reports to council about those and how it's working, what's not working, so that we can make sure we hit the sweet spot. The reality is development applications are down. And also Bill 44 and 47 and the other amendments that have come forward with the province means council seeing less development applications than what you've seen in the past. So this provides council and the public to have them on a public agenda, have the public have an opportunity to comment and come and make those delegations to council when it comes to form and character. So people know exactly what's going to be built in their area, not what was provided at the time of rezoning, because that often changes quite considerably. If you think of 3145 Metchosin that came forward to council, council asked the question of, well, what happens if this property changes hands? And what they said was, well, we would meet the design guidelines and they may change. And what this does is that limits that opportunity to do it. It comes in front of council and then it provides the start date where you have 2 years to complete your development permit with the opportunity for an extension so people can have an understanding of how those fits together. So this puts council back into the driver's seat when it comes to development permits, which is the direction that council had given to staff. But these decision points are important to make sure that we meet council's expectations, and that's why you're seeing this in this forum tonight. What council can also expect in future reports, whether it's planning or other, I was having a conversation with corporate services today where we're talking about decision points again. So you'll see more of this type of report coming forward with those decision points. So as Councillor Day said, you don't have to go through the report and try and figure out what all that is mean and what are the different decision points that are there. That is a rhythmic change that we're making within the administration to make sure that it's quite clear with what council's direction is to staff on all these matters.
Thanks. I will go online to Councillor Jensen, and on deck is Councillor Ward. Go ahead.
Thank you, Worship, and Fantastic. I made a few notes while you were talking, Mari, and a couple of questions. Lots of mention about the design guidelines. I guess first and foremost, I mean, how old is our design guideline bylaw? Because I don't remember doing it in the last couple of terms. And how does staff feel about that as far as basically the reference for a lot of this?
Yeah, thank you for the question. So our design guidelines live in our OCP. So they are from 2018. We certainly have some issues with some design guidelines. Some could be stronger. And I think that should definitely be a part of the scope of work of a broader OCP update, is to look at those design guidelines.
Thank you. And I think that's my point, is that, you know, the community is evolving. And so something that we envisioned in 2018, or, you know, probably a couple of years before that document was finished, may have certainly altered over the course of time. You know, nothing infuriates me more than sitting here and rezoning this property as the same property for the umpteenth time. Do you see this resolving some of that? And I can't think of a specific example off the top of my head, but I've certainly been at the table where, you know, we're rezoning a property, and oddly enough, the zoning never goes down, so it's always an increase in density, and never actually having seen any work being done, you know, or started or contemplated. Again, do you see some of your changes resolving some of that?
Yeah, thank you for the question. So I would say there are two things happening. This evening, we are talking about changing the delegated authority framework. So that's going to give council the ability to comment on what a development will actually look like. When somebody submits a development permit application, that is their commitment to developing. When that development permit is issued, they have 2 years to substantially start construction, or else that development permit will expire. I would say the other thing that we will be exploring is that concurrent rezoning and development permit process. That is not what we are discussing this evening, but that is something we will explore as part of the review of our development approvals process once we receive that grant from UBCM. So that will help the issue of the timing of development. So essentially what that means is once a property receives adoption of rezoning, the next day we would issue that development permit, and they have 2 years to substantially start that construction, or else it expires.
If I could
Thank
add,
you.
if I could add just for clarity, we have a number of properties that have rezoned, and so they have that entitlement. Under the delegated authority now, if that property's been sitting there for 8, 2, 4, 6, 8 years, whatever it is, we have a number of those developments that are out there in the community. This then gives some surety to the public that what was presented at the time of rezoning is then ultimately what you would see at the time of development permit, and council would see that rather than the public being surprised with something not being on agenda, being approved internally through the delegated authority as it sits today. This provides council the opportunity to find what that sweet spot is for council. And then as development activity ramps up, and it will, it's cyclical, right? This is a market that we're in right now. Then council will have an opportunity with a more fulsome opportunity to see the development approach that have come forward and then tailor that approach once again. So this isn't something that will sit here for years in perpetuity. This is just a state in time with where we're at currently, and providing more surety for council and the community about what is being approved after a rezoning is done. Now, to answer Councillor Jansen's question, for those that are seeking rezoning and new entitlements, that would have to come in with a development permit, right? So then that clock would start ticking as soon as that rezoning is adopted, the DP is adopted at the same time. And this isn't something unique to what we do at Colwood. A number of municipalities do it. And you'll have seen in previous reports where it said those communities that have delegated approval authority, and we're in the minority, not the majority at the moment, for what we do in the CRD region with other municipalities.
Thank you.
Thank you. All of that and Mari's comments are fantastic. Is there the more certainty we can provide, and a timeline linkage, you know, for that development, and again, increasing the certainty of bringing a project to a resolution, or if not, that's back to the drawing board in 2 years, so that again we get another look at it, and the community gets another look at it again. All that is fantastic, and Mari, all your little decision points there. I mean, quite frankly, I think all of those are fantastic. I do have. I guess I'm conflicted a little bit about some of the in-stream applicants, as was mentioned earlier, but I just wonder, do you see room to differentiate between some of the in-stream applicants as far as how far along they are? Or is that going to get too granular?
So if council wishes to do that, we certainly can. When we bring back the amending bylaw, we can certainly identify those development permit applications that are ready for issuance. Staff did not do that, as it is fairly convoluted to sort of pick and choose the applications. It was a more simplified approach to just consider the applications that have been submitted but not yet issued.
Okay, thank you. And I mean, I don't want to put more decision taking on you, so I think I understand the philosophy. I guess, do you see a situation there where some developments are going to be delayed dramatically by having to come back to council for some reason here?
I wouldn't say there would be any significant delays. As I mentioned, we have all of the work that would form the staff report for council. Staff, as we have anticipated this amendment, we have created templates for a staff report for development permits. So we have sort of explored what that will look like. So we're not starting from scratch should council direct us to bring development permit reports forward.
Okay, super. Thank you. That was really the only pressure point that I saw. Thank you, Worship.
Councilor Ward.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just note that, some of the commentary is actually reiterating some of the information and discussion that previously happened at land use and planning, as well as at this table. We directed staff to go away and look at a hybrid approach as a reminder. As Mr. Johnson indicated, there is a small minority of communities that do the delegated approach as we do, a very small minority, and I would say inconsequential because of the volume of development in Metchosin and Highlands that do the entirety at the council table because of capacity. And then the majority of the other regions look at a hybrid approach, and it can vary from community to community, but at the end of the day, it doesn't make sense for council to be adjudicating on minor alterations to a single family home, for example, but it does make sense for us to be weighing in on significant projects. So on this staff report, I would say it correctly recognizes that council's role has diminished under provincial legislation. And as a result, public visibility has decreased. And this DP review stage is now the key accountability stage. That's where we can be accountable to ourselves and to our stakeholders in the community. And I think this is important because residents increasingly perceive that projects are approved, quotes, behind closed doors, even when they're legally compliant. And that can be a little frustrating on this side of the table. And so what this framework does is it restores a degree of visibility, and I think gives council something that we've been missing and that I think the public wants to see us have, which is influence over the final built form. That's what people want. They want to know that what was approved at this table gets built. And I won't keep beating that drum, but that's important, I think, for everybody. So because of that, I think the goal here is to support increased council oversight, and transparency while ensuring fairness, predictability, and objective rules. So I think we also have to be very careful in terms of fairness and rules that it's very clear for the development community, because that business will still remain important to us. So I have a couple minor changes in here that I'll propose that I sent to Marcy already, but at the Planning and Land Use Committee, I had brought forward the notion of including master plan communities in here. Because as we've seen, you can have a master plan community that has all of these guidelines in place and it looks wonderful to everybody, but then they parcel off a chunk of land, sell it to a different developer, and all of a sudden what the community was told they're getting becomes something different. And I don't feel that that's appropriate. So I introduced that piece at the Land Use and Planning Committee, but I do think that we need to shift it away from where it says where land ownership is transferred from the original developer to find some middle ground where it says it's transferred from the original developer, and any subsequent development proposal or proposals materially differ from the original master plan, community design framework, or approved design guidelines. So in layperson's terms, I have no problem if developer X sells to developer Y and developer Y is going to build exactly what council approved. It's only when they change it and say, no, we want to add 6 stories and another building, then we need to weigh in. So I think that defines it a little more clearly and creates a pretty level playing field in that environment. I also, I believe Councillor Jansen mentioned the in-stream component, and I think we need to find some middle ground there as well. I don't think you can pull the mat out from under somebody and say, hey, thanks for investing $1 million and having consultant work done, meeting with staff 7 times. Everybody's been out to the site, but guess what? Rules change. We're going to do that today. I think even if it creates a little work, we need to look at allowing some of the in-stream projects to proceed under the old rules if they were accepted as complete for adoption. If they've substantially completed a technical review, they're basically ready to go. It doesn't make sense to me to then restart that whole process. I think we also have to be careful that we make sure that we have everything in place to maintain predictable timelines and avoid unnecessary delays. That's the biggest complaint in some communities, is that things just drag on forever. It's unfair to residents, it's unfair to the developer, all the stakeholders involved. So I think we need to really ensure that we lock that down. And then also I think we're missing the appeal and reconsideration framework in here. We need to really clarify exactly what reconsideration timelines are, reapplication rules after a denial, procedural consistency. So I think we need to clarify what those submission criteria and things like that look like. So I did send an amendment over to Marcy with some of these items in there that kind of clearly spells out the pieces I've just touched on there.
Super. Thanks so much. Councillor Ward, Councillor Grove, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Well, that's a tough act to follow. Thank you, Councillor Ward. The in-stream issue, actually, could I just get define that element a little bit in terms of the timing of it? So it's the DPs that are in process but haven't been issued. Is it's that simple? Okay. Then I understand what Councillor was referring to there in terms of, however, I think you made mention that there was no need for particular change in timing or delay in the process. But I think I heard from the development representative something about the cost of changes, possible changes required. Is that in there? Would that be a concern, or?
So I think that with a change in process when an application is submitted, I think that there is a thought from the development community that there is a risk potentially that the application could be denied by council, which would have impacts on their development.
Yeah, I see that. Okay. Yeah, okay. The other question I had only, I think, fairly simple. So you have the 2-year time on the DP credit, and they have a 1-year extension. Or so when you talk about a substantial start to construction, does that mean sometimes you see an excavator drop on site and bulldoze a building? If that's not substantial start, can you define that, please?
Yeah, so they have to have their building permit in hand, and they have to be starting foundation. Yeah.
Yeah, so yeah, the BP is issued. Yeah, okay, that's all I have to ask. Thank you.
Okay, before I go to you for a second time, I'll just make my comments here. I agree with the majority of the comments that have been made right now. I feel that the report, you did a really good job on this one. I'm going to really praise you for this, because I think you just found that right balance, because you had a lot of things that you had to balance. The accountability, the transparency. You had to look at the housing legislation, the operational practicability of doing what you're doing. And so I think this hybrid model is a good compromise. And I'll use your statements right now, Mr. Johnson, that sweet spot. I think we sort of have it. I don't, we're going to have to test it, I guess, and then we're going to have to learn some lessons and be able to change really quickly. We have to start someplace, right? That's how I see this right now. However, I do think one problem I had is just a fairness thing. This in-stream protection, it is the weak point of the report, because I just think of myself. If I was a citizen right now, and I'm following a process. I've been working this process all along. I'm building my house. I did everything that you wanted me to do, and then I'm 99% or 95% complete my house, and then you come and you change the rules, the bylaws. You say, no, that's not good. Now start from the beginning again. That to me is unacceptable. I don't think from a fairness point of view that I can live with that. I think it's just wrong that we're doing this right now. And that's why I wanted to ensure I understood your table a little more and what you were recommending for all the good reasons. I mean, I don't blame you for making the recommendations, but myself, I just feel that if these people are about to submit for their DPs and whatever, that they're almost there. And I believe how the system works with you, you're working with them all along. There shouldn't be any surprises when you're about to give them their DPs. Am I correct in that assumption? Okay, so I just think it's wrong. Like myself, I'm just thinking, even if I was a developer and I was doing this, I'm following the rules. I'm following everything you told me to do. And at the last moment, you come along and say, well, there's no impact. Well, I would never ever say there's no impact, because you're dealing with the 7 of us around the table. And any one of us could upset the apple cart very easily. And like I said, I think that I think you've basically hit the sweet spot. Some of the changes that Councillor Ward has made, I think, are good changes. And as long as they're not safety related, and unless there's a compelling public interest reason to do so, I could not support that portion of your recommendation. That's where I am right now. And if I hear everybody right now, I think maybe we can do 1, 2, 4, and then discuss 3 if we want to do that. If we want to, look at okay, in-stream. Okay. Anyways, that's my comments on it. I'm just saying you've done a phenomenal job on this, and I couldn't see how you could balance it better than this. To tell you the truth, I was really impressed. It's a really, really good report. Thank you very much.
Mr. Mayor, if I can just
Go ahead.
interject. These are rather the decision points of council, right? We want to make sure that we're meeting what council's direction is. What council said to us is, we'd like to see development permits, and how do we deal with delegated authority? That's why we brought this report to you before we bought the amending bylaws, so that you could make sure that it meets council's expectation. And we're happy for any direction that council would like to give with that. If it includes in-stream protection, we'll continue as is. For those that are close to the finish line, we can outline what those look like in the next report to provide clarity and surety for council and for the development community. And what I've heard is you're looking for that in-stream protection. I just didn't want to be the one signing off on DPs when I've had direction from council that this is something you want to look at. Therefore, that's why you see this brought forward the way it was.
Fair enough. Good point. Thank you. Councillor Day for the second time, and then Councillor Ward.
Thank you. There was one point I forgot to mention from my list of notes. And I did see in the report that landscaping and window placement were kind of characterized as minor issues. However, that brought up for me, remembering where window placement and landscaping have been problematic for some projects that came forward that changed during the process, where a difference in grade was left kind of unaddressed, or where windows are, maybe impacting someone's privacy. So I just felt that there was some caveats where landscaping could be very important, or if it's the stability of an adjacent property that's being impacted. And as far as the in-stream protections, I would just like to suggest that I really think those things still need to come forward to council. Otherwise, when will we stop protecting and start? Because by what I understand, staff are going to bring forward reports to council that would basically be what they would have said to the developers without council. So that is bringing the community into the loop. And I'm not looking to make developers feel unsafe in what are already turbulent times for them. But I am looking for being able to include that public information so that the public is in the loop. And that's all I've got.
Thank you very much. Councillor Ward, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I hear what Councillor Day is saying, and I think it makes sense. I think definitive timelines. I would going to add a word into the motion that I have, but I wanted to move the staff recommendation with the addition of a series of proposed amendments that I had emailed previously. I think there's more than that. Okay, I must consider it. Oh, sure. Okay. So, well, I can speak to it maybe if you don't mind as we go through. For the first one, sorry, let's go back up and leave it there for a moment. So this is what I originally mentioned, is that rather than strictly land ownership transfer, it qualifies it to say where the land ownership is transferred from the original developer. This is specific to master plan communities, and any subsequent development proposal or proposals materially differ from what was originally approved. So again, it just allows for, okay, same to same is okay. Same to different requires council approval. That to me just clarifies. The reason I also say that, I made note of it after speaking to someone who had some legal understanding about that, is that I made a note of it here. Sorry, bear with me just a moment. There was concerns around it not being a land use decision at that point, but it's more of an ownership decision. So what you're doing here is you're aligning it with the land use decision versus just the transference of ownership. So there's no perceived bias. Like, it's not landowner X sells to landowner Y, and now we've said, hey, you can't develop anymore. It's, you know, landowner X sells to landowner Y, and now you've tried to change it, so the land use has changed. It's very subtle, but there was a legal issue if it was just an objection to, could be perceived as an objection or bias to say, well, we don't like this other buyer, so we don't want their project. It puts it back into the land use context, if that makes sense. So that's one. And then the next one, well, actually it says right there, geez, I went through that whole explanation. It grounds the decision in land use planning rationale rather than ownership status. I had a much more concise way of saying it originally. And I wanted staff to include objective criteria within the amending bylaw defining major amendment beyond what we have now, material alteration and development unit count thresholds to ensure consistency and procedural fairness. I think that speaks a little bit to what you were saying, Councillor Day. There'd be an opportunity to review that before we pass this bylaw, so we could really define. You know, we may have a disagreement with staff what a major amendment is or a material alteration. At the end of the day, we have an opportunity to look at that. So let's get the staff definition really clarified, kind of workshop that, and then decide what that looks like. The next one, we can go down. This is speaking about the in-stream piece. I had put that development permit applications deemed substantially complete prior to adoption of the bylaw amendments continue under the existing delegated authority framework. I would maybe consider amending what I put to say that existing or current development permit applications, because that creates a finite status. No, not there, sorry. At the very beginning where it says that development permit applications, I would say that existing development or current, either word would suffice. Existing or current there would work. No, sorry, before development permit. It's hard to type when everyone's talking and looking at you, Marcy. And And so what that does is that creates a finite time frame on that. So it's what's in the hopper right now, what's in the pipeline, right? It's not new stuff. This would mean that they continue under that existing delegating authority. That provides some continuity and consistency to people that have invested. I mean, these are business people. There's a perception that developers have bottomless pits of money. They don't. There's small business owners in the audience. There's former small business owners at the table here. As you used your house analogy, if you've put out a ton of money on something and worked under the auspices of the rules as they are today, I just can't get behind pulling the carpet out from under those folks. But there will be a finite term on that. So nobody new can come in and say, I'm going to do it this other way. And that I wanted staff to include, well, staff to report back with procedural recommendations to ensure development permit approvals maintain predictable timelines and avoid unnecessary delays. I think it's clear that we make it very clear, and I think that's, maybe it was Councillor Day who spoke to that early on, or Councillor Olsen. Somebody said something about uncertainty and people not knowing and everybody needing to know what the process is. And I think we need to make it very clear that if you're going to do something in Colwood, you understand what the rules and the structure are. So that basically speaks to that. And then also the one piece that I spoke of at the end, that staff include reapplication waiting periods and revised submission criteria, so that, if something is turned down, how long it will take to turn it around and what the other criteria is. So that was just a component that was missing I felt that was missing in the initial piece. But otherwise, I would echo what you said, Mr. Mayor. I think it's an excellent report. I think the hybrid model is the approach that we should take, and it's what we directed staff to come back with, and I would laud them for doing a spectacular job and very detailed work here. That's my motion, by the way. Looking for a seconder.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Wilson. And we'll go to discussion on the motion on the floor. I can't see. Oh, there's Councillor Jensen. Councillor Jensen is clear. Seeing none, I will call the question then. All those in favor? Any opposed? Seeing none, motion carries unanimous. Thank you very much. Great job, everyone. It's a tough one to get through, but it was good. I mean, you laid down the foundation, the fairest thing. And the great thing about this is that, we hopefully got the sweet spot. We might have to adjust here and there. My biggest worry is that I think you've actually minimized the risk of council becoming the what I call the administrative bottleneck. I think we're there, but who knows? We'll find out, I guess. Okay, thank you very much. And then we shall move on to 8.4, which is the Family Youth Court. And Councillor Day, I'll turn it over to you. Councillor Day.
Thank you. I just wanted to take the opportunity to bring to your attention a couple of things done through the Victoria Family Court. And in this annual report, there is God, my words are leaving me now. There's a very good report on the Mobile Youth Services team and the important work that they do that was done by a professional accredited person following the Mobile Youth Services team. And a focus from the Family Court Committee to look at the integrated unit teams and who work on domestic issues of violence, and also integrated police units working on guns and gangs through the region. So the Mobile Youth Services team was one that comes to mind simply because there's been a lot of discussion and there has been a move from the West Shore RCMP to potentially no longer fund the positions that pair police officers with counselors to work with youth to try to prevent them from entering that particular stream, and especially the work of CRAT working on assisting sexually exploited youth within the region. And in the last year, they also worked with the Youth Empowerment Society to provide additional resources through grant monies from the CRD and family court to provide additional services to youth who were living on the streets and needing assistance while they were waiting for those wait lists to finally while themselves down to them actually being able to receive service. And they were able to help a lot of youth with a very small grant. So just there's a lot of good documented research in that report when it comes to looking at services for youth and families in our region.
Thank you very much. Any questions for Councillor Day? Thank you, Councillor Day, for the update. It's really good. Thank you. Okay, at this point in time, we're going to go into in camera. If you could just read up what the motion is, and then we'll ask everyone to leave the room.
Thank you, Your Worship. So we are closing the meeting to the public in accordance with the following section of the Community Charter. 91, part of the council meeting is closed as it relates to labor relations or employee relations, as well as section 92B, the consideration of information received and held in confidence relating to negotiations between the municipality, provincial government, or federal government. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Can I just get a motion and then we'll take a pause. Thank you. Thank you. Oh, Council Ward. Any opposed? Seeing none, motion carries, and we'll just take the pause here.
We need to do